Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. This is Wendy. Today we're going to be doing 3 Dollar Tree, Goodwill, Trash to Treasure projects for spring and the Lenten season. So for our first project, we're going to start with this sign that I found at the Goodwill for $4.99. I like it the way it is, but I want to change it up a little bit. I'm going to be using a couple of these maps that I had on hand of our local area. And then this cross that I got from Dollar Tree, some Mod Podge in the matte finish. I got this at Walmart. And then I'm going to be using my Silhouette Cameo 3. So I have some black vinyl, my transfer tape from Dollar Tree, my squeegee, and weeding tool. And the first thing we're going to do is pull off the tag and get our surface ready. I didn't have to include any paint in this project, which is always good for me. I'm going to cover this with the maps, and the first thing I did was get the colors that I wanted. This is going to have a lot of greens in it, and I thought that would work pretty well because the sign already starts with some greenish colored stain for the original sign. So what I did is just kind of folded it over to measure where I need to cut it out, and I'm going to make strips so that each of those planks are individually covered. I don't want the map to be exactly in the same order that the map is already in, otherwise it would just be completely the same. So for each plank, I'm going to cut out pieces and then do it in different orders. I was going to use this brownish tan colored map, and I think it's really pretty and it would be great on its own, but I didn't like the way it looked with the green, so I'm just going to go with the green. So using my fingernail, I'm sure you could find another tool to do this, but I just made kind of an indentation to show where to cut that out, and then just made strips for each of the individual planks. Once I figured out the order of my strips of the map, I'm going to go in with some Mod Podge, and using a foam brush from the Dollar Tree, I just laid down a pretty thin layer of the Mod Podge individually on each of the planks, and then placed my strip of map over that. And then I just did that for all of the different planks all the way down. And then I'm going to go back in and cover it with 2 more coats of the Mod Podge. I didn't want it to be completely flat, so any creases or bubbles or wrinkles that naturally showed up, I left those intact and kind of used my finger to press those down and into place, just to give it a little more of an aged look and some more character. So after I got 2 more coats onto the board, I wanted it to still be a little juicy, so then I took my fingernail and made little creases in between the planks. I started to use my utility knife, but it was a little bit too dull, so it started ripping, which was fine, and it looked cute that way too. But then I took my Cricut spatula and just pushed down in between so that the pieces of map would actually push into the insides of those creases. So then I'm going to take my sanding block and just start rubbing over the edges so that the paper will just kind of magically pull away at the edge, and it gives it a nice clean and crisp edge, but at the same time it doesn't look like it's just cut with scissors. And then just to make sure the paper doesn't come up between the edges, I'm going to make sure that those seams get completely Mod Podged in place. So I decided that it was a little bit just too green. I wanted it to be softer and more natural looking, so I took a little bit of my white chalk paint and just kind of dry brushed it over to knock down that green a little bit. So I'm going to be using the scripture Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." And I measured each of my planks to make sure that I could get one line per plank and that it would fit inside. I made little boxes of those measurements so that I could then make my fonts within that box, and then I would have the right size. So because the words were so large, I had to do this on 2 separate sheets of vinyl, but you can still see what it looks like and the setup as you're designing it in the design portion of the silhouette suite. So I always like to put my words as close together as possible, and then I'll usually put a line in between the sentences. But in this case, they were so close together, I used my utility knife instead to kind of make lines in between that weren't exactly straight, but that way I can weed one line at a time and not have so much vinyl to deal with as I'm pulling it off. After I get everything weeded out and placed where I want it, then I'm going to put my transfer tape on top, and then I'm going to cut the sentences so that it's easier to manage, number one, and then also I have the right spacing on my planks. So I just pulled off the backing and then placed it on top of the plank that I wanted it to go on, used my squeegee to get out any bubbles, and then pulled off the transfer tape, and my words were down. And one thing I've learned when removing either the backing paper from your vinyl or your transfer tape from whatever surface you're applying the words to is that if you go in a zigzag motion, it releases the vinyl a lot easier. So if you do have a piece that comes up or the vinyl doesn't want to stick down, just reapply the transfer tape and then squeegee it on again and it'll come right off. Also, if you put your transfer tape on a surface like your jeans or something, your countertop, whatever, it will make less of the stickiness stay on there, so it makes it easier to transfer and not ruin the surface that you're putting your words onto, but also it will release the vinyl a little bit easier so that it will transfer. So as you can see, I left a spot open in the left-hand bottom corner, and I'm going to put my Dollar Tree cross in that area. So I first removed the base by just unscrewing the screws and taking them out of the little tab that was holding it onto it, and then I just pulled it over and folded it down so that you didn't see that portion. Then I'm going to take my Waverly white chalk paint and paint the wood part of the cross. I'm going to paint that white, and I did a couple of coats for that. But then on the corrugated metal that it's sitting on top of, it was a little too shiny, so I'm going to take some black paint and then some white paint and just kind of make that look a little more weathered and knock down that shine. Then I'm going to take my black apple barrel paint and just go over the edges and kind of give it a shadowy look and make it, again, look even more weathered. And then I just took my hot glue and glued that in the area that I wanted. And here's how it turned out. I absolutely love this. And in case you watched the video that I put out just the other day, where my daughter talks about her experience with miscarriage, this was the inspiration for this project, and I knew I wanted to kind of illustrate that scripture in a big way. And so I sure appreciate all of the comments and the stories that you guys have been sharing. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it in the description box below. There's no crafting or anything like that. It's just kind of an inspirational and encouraging message that my daughter had shared with our church MOPS group, Mothers of Preschoolers. So I had actually forgotten that I still had the video, and when we were doing the baby shower video for the decor that we're going to be using on that, there were a lot of people that shared that experience, and I happened to see the video, got her permission to show it. And so if you've experienced that same pain through miscarriage, I would highly recommend you watch it. For our next project, we're going to be using this wood banner from the Dollar Tree. This 3-pack of sprinkles that I found at the Goodwill for 97 cents. And we're just using the bottles. And then these white string tags that I got from the Dollar Tree. Some jute twine. A sanding block. 3 sprigs of our lavender. This I got at Walmart. And then our white and black paint, some painter's tape, and our hot glue gun, scissors, and wire cutters. And so I'm going to start by first getting our glitter off of the front and making it a flat area to paint. And so using my sanding block and my Cricut spatula, I just made sure that everything was perfectly flat and cleaned it off with a microfiber cloth. And then I taped my jute twine hanger to the back so that it wouldn't get in the way while I was painting. And then I masked off the top piece of wood because I want to keep that in the original stained color. Next, I'm going to pour some Waverly White chalk paint over the top and just painted the entire board. And I kind of cut in at the top so that it wouldn't bleed into that top board piece, and then just gave it a complete coverage. And this took 2 coats. If you have a heat gun, or everybody has a blow dryer, I'm sure you can use that to speed up the drying process in between coats. So now I'm going to get my little bottles ready, and I just took those out of the package and dumped out the sprinkles that were inside. And they have these cute little corks at the top, but I'm not going to be using those for this project. I'll hopefully find a use for them in something else. But I'm going to take my jute twine and wrap around 4 times at the bottom just to give it a little interest and a place to adhere it to the sign that you won't be able to see. And I'm always getting asked where I got my finger protectors, but I will put the link in the description box below, and hopefully they have them in stock this time. So now I'm going to make my little tags for each of the vases, and I'm going to give you a couple of options for this project. For this year-round version, I'm just writing in faith, hope, and love from 1 Corinthians 13:13. And I'm just writing in cursive and then using my Sharpie. I'm going to go back in with the downstrokes and make those fatter at the edges just to make it a little fancier. And I also did a video that kind of gives you a tutorial on how to do this a little more in detail. So I'll link that video in the description box below. Then to attach the tags, I first tied a knot at the very top. These tags come with the little strings already on there. So I cut off the part that had the knot so that I could open them up and tie it around the top part of the vase, and then just tied a knot in the back, and then just make sure it's pretty tight so it doesn't slide down the vase. So for this version, I'm going to be making this for our Lenten season, and this is based on the time that Jesus spent in the desert for 40 days. So the Lenten season for us lasts 40 days, and as he was preparing for his ministry that would come after his time in the desert, he fasted and prayed, and so that's two of the things that we do. And then there's a third portion of it that we call almsgiving or charity, and so I just wrote give as the third part of how we prepare ourselves for Easter, which is the highest holy day of the year. So just like Advent is before Christmas, and that's when we prepare for Jesus's birth, Lent is the preparation time of Easter, which is the resurrection and the most important part of the year. Okay, so now that my paint is completely dry, I'm going to pull off my painter's tape, and then I'm going to take some black apple barrel acrylic paint, and then using a makeup sponge, I'm going to paint the sides and give it kind of a distressed, uneven look all the way around. And then again, I'm going to give you a couple of options of what to do at the top. So the first option, I'm going to take my black and white buffalo check wired edged ribbon, and I got this at Hobby Lobby during Christmas time. I'm going to make a bow using the fold over method, so I folded it so that there's 3 loops on each side, and then I'm going to cut the edges just real small so that my chenille stem can go into it, and then you're able to move your loops a little easier and they're not just all in a row. And then fluff out my loops and get them where I want them to be. And then I'm going to fold my tails in half and then cut at a diagonal so that I have my dovetail edges. Then I'm going to take the excess chenille stem and attach that to the top of the jute twine hanger, and make sure that it's in the middle so that it will hang straight. So to attach my vases, I wanted to use these adhesive dots from the Dollar Tree, and they work really well, and for other projects it will probably be very useful. But even though the little vases were super light, overnight one of them did fall off, so I had to go back in with some hot glue to make sure that they were secure. So let's just pretend that you're watching me do this with hot glue as we put them on. But regardless, we're going to put the middle one on first so that we have that centered, and then we'll go back in with the ones on the right and the left so that our spacing is perfectly even. So of course you can put anything you want into the vases. In this case, one of the options is to use some lamb's ear. This is $2 at Walmart for the bunch that you see. It's 2 sprigs in the one bunch. And here's how it turned out with the buffalo check bow and the lamb's ear. Or you can change it for spring and use these cattails from Dollar Tree, spring bouquet, or in this case lavender, which is what I'm going to use for my Lenten version as well. So for that, I'm going to be using this round cardboard piece. This came off of the triangular frame that we used in the decor for my daughter's baby sprinkle video. And so I just painted it with the black acrylic apple barrel paint, and this took a couple of coats, but I wanted it to kind of look like chalkboard. And so then I'm going to go back after it's completely dry with my white paint pen, and I'm going to write in the word Lent. Now you could also, if you go with the Faith, Hope, and Love version, you could write 1 Corinthians 13:13 at the top. So then for the hanger, I turned my Lent over and making sure that it was perfectly centered. I took a piece of extra chenille stem that I had and hot glued it to the top after I folded it in half. And then I'm going to take the jute twine hanger from the banner and place that into some more hot glue and then cover it up with a little piece of burlap ribbon that I had in my scrap pile, just to give it a little bit more security and to make it a little more finished. And here it is all done, and I love this. And the purple lavender is perfect because in the liturgical year we have different colors for the different seasons in Jesus's life, and purple represents Lent. For our final project, we're going to be using 3 of these Frappuccino bottles, some numbered poster stickers from Dollar Tree, some scrap pieces of ribbon that matches whatever decor you're decorating in, some wooden beads, and these came from a garland from Christmas time that I had left over, some acetone and paper towels and your Cricut scraping tool or spatula, some jute twine, some Waverly white chalk paint, a glue gun, scissors, and a Dollar Tree sanding block. And the first thing we're going to do is get our stickers off of our bottles, and I did that by pulling it up, but there's a sticky residue that stays on there and it doesn't really come up if you just scrape it. So using a paper towel, I just wiped it off and it came right off. So after I got them perfectly cleaned, I painted them with 3 coats of white chalk paint, and I painted the top rims as well. And then in order to paint my red beads white, I put them onto a skewer and then painted them with the same white chalk paint. This is kind of time consuming, so if you can find some white beads instead, that would make your life a lot easier. I don't really mind because I sit in my craft room doing these projects and my Christian music is playing in the background, and it's just kind of a quiet meditative time to spend with Jesus. So once my bottles are completely dry, I'm going to take those black stickers, and just because in Farmhouse, I don't know, I guess we like to count things, but I'm going to put a 1, a 2, and a 3 on each of the bottles. And then I'm going to make little tassels with beads. And so what I first did was wrap around the jute twine 20 times. It doesn't have to be 20, but that seems to be the right size. I should have put a piece of twine into the in my hand before I started wrapping so that I wouldn't have to go through an extra step, but I'll show you that in a second. So then about 2/3 of the way up, I'm going to tie another piece of jute twine around that. And then I'll cut that off, and then at the bottom where the loops are, I'm going to cut those apart to make the tassel, and then using a large-eyed needle I'll have to go back in to pull those all together at the top. Then I'll tie a knot at the top of that, and then I'm going to put my needle onto one side of the jute twine, and I'll start stringing my beads, and I did a total of 6, but you can only get one piece of twine through at a time because it's too thick to go through the beads. So I just did it first on one side, and then I went back and threaded my needle on the other piece of twine to get that second one up through those beads. So now I'm going to tie one more knot at the top of my threaded beads, and then I'm going to wrap it around the neck of the bottle and tie another knot and then cut off my excess twine. And then I took a piece of scrap ribbon in the gingham, black and white gingham, and I'm just going to tie that around the top of my beads. And then to put my candles on top of the opening, I had to use a piece of cardstock. So I just traced around the opening and cut those circles out. And then I'll hot glue those to the openings of the bottles so my votives can sit right on top of that. And then to get rid of the excess paper, I'm going to use my sanding block once again, and I'm actually going to go over the circle parts of the opening and make that look a little rustic and distressed. So then I put my candles on top and it's all done, and I love how simple but cute this turned out, and it's so farmhouse and so cute. I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you're not already subscribed, I hope that you will consider pushing that big red button so that we can grow this channel. I would love for you to hit the thumbs up and leave a comment, share this video if you have a chance, and above all, I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye.